Hello! Welcome back to Video Gamers Oasis on YouTube, and I'm your host Jeremy with another segment of our podcast, reading the book Chess in 30 Minutes. We're nearing the end of chapter 1. We're going to complete our analysis of the chess pieces with two final chess pieces we're going to learn about, the knight and the pawn, in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Video Gamers Oasis. Website, YouTube channel.
Podcast Miniseries. E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes. Study and Practical Application. Chapter 1. The Basic Rules of Chess. Subheading: The Chessboard and Pieces. The Knight and the Pawn. Pages 23 to 26. Chess in 30 Minutes. Paperback by E.S. Lowe. Published in January 1st, 1955, 5 out of 5 stars. Barb 1992 said, 5 stars. Good handy book. Reviewed in the United States on May 14th, 2014. Verified purchase. Book is in really good condition. Arrived before scheduled time. Member of my family has had it for years. Now I can learn playing chess from my own copy. Clear and simple guide for beginners. Buy this book on Amazon. Link in the description.
Welcome back to E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes podcast mini-series. We're going to learn about how to get an edge on the other players in chess. We're completing our tour of all the chess pieces on the board, with just 2 left to study: the knight and the pawn. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to Video Gamers Oasis on YouTube. Click the notification bell, send some likes, send some love if you like what you see. If you're a big chess player and fascinated in chess like myself, you'll want to show a little appreciation by subscribing and liking, favoriting, sharing with your friends. I do appreciate it. I also appreciate your feedback in the comment section below. Now let's zoom in on the first chess piece we're going to discuss tonight, or today, as the case may be, in this episode, the knight. On page 22. The knight is the great exception to the way all the other chess pieces move. Diagram 19, how the knight moves. There's diagram 19 right there. The knight's move is always of the same length. It moves 3 squares. In diagram 10, as we can see here, the crosses indicate 8 possible knight moves. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we can move. There's different X's showing the direction of the knight. Another peculiarity of the knight's move is that it moves in 2 directions at any one move. You can check the following description of the knight's move from the location of the crosses on diagram 10. See the various X's here on the chessboard showing the various directions that the knight could move. Moving back to the paragraph, the knight moves 2 squares up or down, and then 1 square left or right. Another way to describe the knight's move is, he moves 2 squares left or right, and then 1 square up or down. Note this. If the knight is on a white square, he will move to a black square. If he is on a black square, he will move to a white square. Page 22, moving on to the next page. Page 23. Here we have diagram 11. How the knight captures. The knight captures the same way as he moves, on the end square of his move. Thus, in diagram 11, he can capture any of the black pawns. So we have an example here of the white knight can move forward once and then diagonally to capture a pawn. They can move in another direction, the black pawn below and the black pawn above. The knight can jump over friendly or hostile pieces located on the intervening squares of his move. This is another point about this piece that makes it quote-unquote different. Of course, when the knight jumps over a hostile piece, he cannot capture that piece. Only the hostile pieces on the end square of his move are vulnerable to his attack. Remember this too. If that end square is occupied by a friendly piece, the knight cannot move to that square. Next paragraph. At the beginning of the game, diagram 1, the knights are placed between the rooks and the bishops. As we mentioned before, the whites are reversed for the black pieces as well, for the kings and queens, as far as black and white squares. Moving on to page 23, the next and last piece listed here is the pawn. The pawn is another chessman that involves some interesting exceptions to the general rules. The pawn moves in only one direction, forward. The white pawns move toward the black side. They move up the page. In our diagrams, the black pawns, page 24 here, the black pawns move toward the white side. They move down the page in our diagrams. At the beginning of the game, all the white pawns are placed in the second horizontal row on white side. We can see that in diagram 1. All the black pawns are placed in the second horizontal row on black side, diagram 1. Whenever a pawn moves ahead from this second row, it has the choice of playing one square or two. Thereafter, it can move only one square ahead. So here we have diagram 12. How the pawn moves before moving. These are all examples of how the pawn moves before moving. It's the position they take. In diagram 12, we have 3 white pawns and 3 black pawns. Let us see the results of their moves in diagram 18. The bottom diagram on the
13.
Page
My
24.
apologies, I did not read it
Diagram
correctly.
18. How the pawn moves after moving. So we can see the example of these pawns, what they look like after they have moved. Moving on to page 25. Page 25. The white pawn at the extreme right remained unmoved. The white pawn in the center took the option of advancing one square at its first move. The white pawn at the extreme left took the option of advancing 2 squares at its first move. The black pawn at the extreme left took the option of advancing 1 square at its first move. Here we have diagram 14, how the pawn captures before capturing. Here we have the position of the various pawns and the enemy pieces here. The black as well as the white. We have I think we have a queen and a black rook as well. Let's let the paragraph explain. Unlike all the other chessmen, the pawn does not capture the same way as it moves. The pawn's move, as you have seen, is straight ahead, but the pawn captures one square forward to the left or the right. But the pawn captures one square forward to the right or left. Thus, at the extreme right on diagram 14, white's pawn can capture black's rook. So we can see here, this pawn, white pawn, can capture black's rook on the upper corner of the chessboard. Page 26. Sorry, this book is very old and it's in typewriter format, and it's difficult to read all the numbers in this book. This is before we had desktop publishing. This is a very old-fashioned book. It's a great book, but it's difficult to read all the print. Page 26. Pawns, like all the other chess pieces, capture by displacing the captured piece from its square. At the extreme left of diagram 14, either pawn or can capture the other. In the center of diagram 14, black's pawn can capture white's queen. Diagram 15 shows the position resulting from the pawn captures. Diagram 15. How the pawn captures after capturing. Here I have the positions of the various pawns on the board after capturing. Paragraph reads, in this first chapter we have seen how the various chessmen move and capture. In the next chapter, we shall see how to win a game of chess. Page 26. And there you have it, folks. That's all the time we have for this reading. We'll take a break here on page 26, moving on to the next paragraph, the next page, and chapter 2. Before we end our podcast episode, let's have a brief review of what we learned so far about the knight and the pawn. The knight. The knight can only move or jump directly to the indicated squares, but pieces on his path don't block him. The following is a mock-up of diagram 10, how the knight moves, in page 22 from the book E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes. Diagram 10, how the knight moves. These are the different positions on the chessboard exactly based on the diagram. So we have the knight, the horse symbol obviously, the horse piece, on the square of F3. Now the piece can move here, 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 and almost like a clock back to that direction as well. Now this chessboard setup is based on diagram 11, how the knight captures. The chessman is set up on F4 on the chessboard, and we have a pawn on E2, another pawn on D5, and a third pawn on G9. And we see the different positions that the knight could capture. Capture over here on G9. The knight could capture on D5. And finally, the knight could capture the pawn on e2. These are all different positions of the knight that the knight can capture. And remember, the knight can only capture enemy pieces on the last square. And of course, the knight can only land on the opposite colored square. So in this case, the knight is on a dark square, can only land on a white square. The knight cannot land on a dark square unless it starts on a white square. Good to know that. The pawn. The pawn can only move one square forward. It can move either 1 or 2 squares forward only the first time it moves. It can move diagonally 1 square only when capturing a piece. It cannot capture pieces when moving forward. The following is a mock-up of diagram 12, how the pawn moves before moving. So we have the different positions of the pawns, both the white pawn and the black pawn. We have first of the white pawn, we have on a2. The second white pawn is on d2. And the third white pawn is on h2. On the black side, we have the 7b pawn. Then we have the next pawn on e7. And finally, the last pawn on g7. The following mock-up is based on diagram 13, how the pawn moves after moving, on page 24 from the book. Here we have the pawn that was originally on the white square is now moved 2 spots to a4. And then we have the next pawn that was originally on the black space, black square. It's now on the white square on d3. And the white pawn to the right has remained on h2. The next mock-up, based on the diagram 14, how the pawn captures before capturing. So here we have some examples of white pieces here and the black pieces. We have the white pawn here and the black pawn here. Then we have the queen, the white queen, and the black pawn on the angle. Moving forward to the other opposite end of the board. And we have the pawn, the white pawn, on a diagonal position against the black rook. We can see that the white pawn is on b4, the black pawn is on b5. This black pawn against the queen is on d4, and the white queen is on e3, and the white pawn on the right side of the board is on g3, and the black rook is on h4. Here we have an example on diagram 15 on this 3D chess video game. Diagram 15, how the pawn captures after capturing. At the extreme left of diagram 14, neither pawn can capture the other. They're face to face, they're deadlock, they cannot capture each other. Next piece, we see that black pawn can capture the white's queen, and he has done that already. The white's queen is already in his captivity. And finally, the white pawn on the right has captured the black rook. And there we have the last 2 pieces of the chessboard, the knight and the pawn, discussed in full. Our complete discussion and in-depth study of all the chess pieces. Tune in next episode. We're going to study page 27, and that will be chapter 2, Winning Methods in Chess. I hope you'll join me for my exciting continuing saga on this mini-series podcast of reading of E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes. I'm certainly having a good time learning about this game and this book. Many years after I was a kid, I dabbled in this book and I didn't fully understand it, didn't fully appreciate it. Now for the first time, I'm going to have an in-depth study of the entire book. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Click that subscribe button and notification bell. Send some likes, send some love. Favorite, comment, share with all your friends. If you have friends who are into chess. And leave your comments below. I do appreciate your feedback. Any constructive criticism would be most appreciated. Bye for now.
Podcast Miniseries. E.S. Lowe's Chess in 30 Minutes. Study and practical application.